Imagine witnessing valor under fire, and doing more than anyone could ever expect. Dive into this unbelievable tale of courage, compassion, and unprecedented power. If you crave stories that shock your heart and stir your soul, hit subscribe. You're about to read what the world couldn't stop talking about. When the city's most elusive billionaire, Adrian Voss, stepped into the dimly lit café on 5th and Elm, he thought he was just grabbing his usual black coffee, no sugar, no cream, but what he got instead was a front row seat to something far more extraordinary, a moment that would forever alter his life and reverberate across global headlines. Sarah Monroe, a waitress working double shifts to send money home for her younger sister's leukemia treatment, didn't flinch when the robbery began, didn't scream or cry or crumble like everyone else did, and instead remained eerily calm, her gaze steady, her hands betraying no tremor as the masked gunman barked orders and demanded cash, as patrons scattered and phones slipped forgotten into pursed lips, and the room, heavy with fear, seemed to freeze. Yet Sarah moved with a studied grace that suggested something deeper, something forged in hardship, and Adrian, seated near the window, watched mesmerized, the hand-to-hand commerce of a latte becoming background noise to the unfolding drama, his heart thudding in disbelief, when the robber, unmasked by serendipity for a heartbeat, revealed himself as a once-fired former manager of the café, who vowed revenge and made his demands. Sarah, alone standing between him and the terrified staff, leaned forward with a calm voice and offered him kindness instead of fear, asked him quietly what his pain was, and in that disarming soft tone he faltered, lowered the weapon almost imperceptibly, their eyes locking in a moment pregnant with possibility, and that's when Adrian's world tilted. He chased down gain and power, acquisitions and boardrooms, never this raw, unguarded human vulnerability, and yet in Sarah's courage, he saw what all his money could never buy. Integrity under pressure, empathy in crisis, pure unselfishness, and somehow he knew, he could not walk away. As the robber's resolve melted, the gun clattered to the floor, and Sarah edged closer, speaking of forgiveness, of second chances, of not letting fear rule us, and the man, seized by some tumult of guilt and desperation, sank to his knees and cried, as the police, alerted by a brave patron texting under the table, swarmed in, cuffing the would-be thief who by then looked more broken than violent. Adrian rose, his breath ragged, and crossed to Sarah just as the ambulance sirens wailed, his heart pounding with an emotion he hadn't felt in years, as though she had reopened a well of something he had long thought dry. The next morning, all over social media, a video of her, calm, compassionate, unshakable, went viral, and journalists swarmed, calling her a hero, a modern saint, and demanding to know who she was, how she stayed so calm, did she not fear for her life, when she told them simply that she was thinking of her sister's smile, and how she didn't want to fail her, and though she had fear in her chest, she also had hope in her heart, and that was stronger. Adrian watched the reports from his penthouse, the first real thing he'd watched in months that didn't involve markets or mergers, feeling his chest tighten as he listened to her voice, humble and gentle, alive and real. On a dare from reporters, he issued a statement. "Who is this woman? I want to meet her." And when the world gasped at the billionaire's interest in a waitress, not a model, not a celebrity, Adrian requested Sarah's full story be shared, with her consent, of course, with his global network, promising nothing but hoping he could do something, anything, to help her stay calm again, but this time in peace, not in violence. Sarah, wary of attention, declined. But Adrian persisted, contacting her with a private message that began simply, "You saved a life yesterday, not just one life, but every life at the cafe, and also mine." "Thank you," she responded, cautiously polite, and told him about her sister, about the insurmountable medical bills that loomed, about the guilt she carried at not doing more, and Adrian read every word, feeling the world shift. What if he could do more? Without spectacle, without headlines, quietly, just help. He began. A one-time donation, to ease the hospital costs, made in her name anonymously, but papers leaked it anyway. They called her the miracle waitress, and speculation ran wild about the source of the funds, and Adrian, who had never wanted attention, felt uncomfortably in the spotlight, but he also realized something that startled him. He wanted to stand with Sarah, not behind her, to help rewrite a story of wealth not used for self-aggrandizement but genuine change, and he offered her something dangerous, not a job as his personal assistant, but a foundation, co-chaired by her, that would offer micro-grants to families struggling with medical crises. No red tape, no endless forms, just help. Sarah nearly collapsed reading the offer, fearing another trap, afraid she'd be swallowed by media or corrupted by attention, but Adrian added a clause. No press, no photos. Unless you want them. And she, weary but hopeful, accepted, on one condition. No cameras, and training for managing funds, the community's needs she knew better than he ever would. He agreed, and they sat across from each other in that same café. Quiet, rebuild of trust. Sarah in her uniform and apron, Adrian in a hoodie and jeans, anonymity shielding them, and they sketched outlines of how to help other families like hers. For every dollar placed in the foundation, Sarah would vet 100% of recipient needs personally, and Adrian would match up to 6 figures, quiet funding to cover rent, food, treatment, and that's when the first twist hit. The disgraced former manager turned robber, now in recovery therapy, reached out, asking to contribute, saying that Sarah's compassion changed him, and he wanted to pay it forward in small ways. Helped cleaning tables, bought supplies, part of the foundation's staffing, and social media flipped. The villain became volunteer, all because a waitress stayed calm. The foundation, anonymous funding, grassroots vetting, started saving families from eviction, from hunger, from despair, and in each case Sarah visited, using her charm, her memory, her ability to sit in a room full of need and still whisper hope. Adrian watched the numbers, the funds dispersed, yes, but more. Photos of children reunited with medicine, parents given a night off, letters thanking the hidden angel. He realized, as he sat in boardrooms hearing only quarterly earnings, that this was the revenue that mattered, and the profit that filled his hollows. A second twist. A powerful philanthropist publicly offered to scale the foundation, but insisted on attaching his name, turning it into a PR campaign. Sarah balked, Adrian hesitated, but together they declined, reinforcing their vow to stay anonymous and humble, and the philanthropist pivoted, joining as quiet donor, his name still secret. Meanwhile, the robber, rehabilitated, started speaking publicly with Sarah's consent about redemption, and the world, already stirred by her courage, was now enthralled by this unlikely trio. The waitress, the billionaire, and the ex-robber turned helper. Adrian, who had built his empire on ruthless deals, felt something strange bloom. He was proud, not of himself, but of them, and one morning, he took out his ledger and erased the projected profit lines for the quarter. They'd been driven by cuts and cost savings, but penciled in new target, town cleanup budgets, after-school tutoring, sick kid grants, and in that erasure he felt more alive than ever. Around the world, communities asked how such a foundation operated, but Sarah always gave the same answer. We don't talk about who gives. We talk about who gets help. And even the media, hungry for names and logos, were drawn to the purity of it. The final twist comes when Sarah, on her sister's birthday, brings her to the cafe, now freshly painted, blossoming with flowers from foundation donations, and as the cake's candles are lit, Adrian steps in, not in a suit, not as a headline, but quietly, carrying a bouquet, and says, "Happy birthday," and for once, the cameras and headlines stay gone, because no one wanted to break this beautiful scene, this real, human moment built on courage, empathy, and a billionaire's quiet choice to be more than money. And in that cafe, the waitress, the sister, the millionaire, no titles between them, and the foundation, silent but strong, becomes a movement, not defined by wealth or fame but by unwavering calm, compassion under fire, and the world watched, changed, breathing something new.